Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. My dad will be so grateful. See you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Coelho, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire podcast explores these 3 tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
So glad to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, as I was saying before we started recording, I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, and thank you for your patience as we've had to reschedule a few times. But I really am excited about this conversation because you are doing what I have been talking about for years and want to do myself. You have retired early into a mini retirement from Google. And you worked at Google for a long time. We'll let you tell your story, but I'm really excited because we have a lot of similar experiences going through being at Google a long time and then ripping off the golden handcuffs, so to speak, and actually stepping into the next chapter of your life. Super excited to have you on the podcast and to talk with you about this.
Yeah, it's very exciting to be talking to someone as well who's gone through that life, or like he's going through that life with Google and all that. Very excited to be sharing my journey with your audience and you.
Awesome. Well, let's have you start by sharing a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to now.
Yeah, sounds good. So I do the full introduction thing. So I am 36. I am French, as you will quickly tell by my accent. I've been living in Switzerland now for the past 7 years, and I've been living outside of France, let's say abroad, for the past 12 years. I am currently on a mini retirement after leaving Google this past April. And I had been at Google for 10 plus years. So really this leaving the big tech long-term, I don't want to say position because I changed multiple times, but a long-term career at Google earlier this year. And I am now spending my time relaxing, reading, talking to people, meeting friends and family, and just enjoying my mini retirement for at least a year.
Cool. That's great. Would love to explore how you made it happen, right? Let's start with, when did you first learn about FIRE and financial independence? And when did that first come on your radar?
Yeah. So that started 6.5 years ago. And I'm going to play the romantic card there. It started from love. The reason for that is, so when I arrived in Switzerland, I had been at Google already for 4 years. And then I joined the research PA, so the research department at Google. And in the office right next to me was this guy, Jan. And we became friends, and eventually we started dating. And he is 17 years older than I am. Right there, it was like, all right, very quickly, I realized this would be serious relationship. And I was like, 10 years different. If I retire at 60, he'd be 77. That doesn't sound fun. Like, what would we do then? Right? It really started from a practicality where I Googled, okay, how can I retire much earlier than 60? I think that's pretty much what I had typed. And that's when I discovered FIRE and all of this, process of not only the 4% rule and a target number, but what to do with my money and how to invest. At the same time, I have to say, when I arrived in Switzerland, that is the first time I started putting my money down and trying to track things, because I had to shift. So before Zurich, where I was based, I was in Dublin with Google. And when I did the change, I had to handle changing my retirement plans. I had to handle obviously changing my banks and moving money aside and whatever, checking on the Google stocks that we were receiving and things like this. This is when I realized that I had never logged into my account of Google stocks. After 3 years and a half at Google, I had never logged into my retirement account. I had zero idea of what was there. So this is also the first time when I properly, thanks to FIRE as well, started planning and putting down what is it that I have, logging into accounts even. I had to email them and calling them, I've been with you for 3 years and a half. I never logged in. How do I do that? Ridiculous. And that's how I got started as well, from the purely operational perspective of just realizing I need to know where I'm starting from. And yeah, that's how I got into it. So now, then everything that goes after that.
Yeah, I think that realization and you emailed me about this as well, which was an awesome email to receive, that if I retire at 60, he'll be 77. And like, what can we actually do there? It reminds me of the book Die with Zero. Have you read that?
Big influence for me. Oh, big influence. We can talk about that later, but yeah, I live by that.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. And it's like, it flips a lot of what you think about money and saving money on its head. And basically, one of the core premises of that book is like, do things that you want to do now while you can still do them, right? Like, you can't hike Machu Picchu or the Inca Trail in Peru when you're 77, probably, right? Some people will be in great shape and can do that, but most people won't, or won't have the energy or time or interest to do that. So do it when you're in your 30s or 40s. So to have this realization that your best years with your partner are happening right now, how can you make early retirement and creating that space in your life happen sooner rather than later? That's a great why for FI.
Yeah, exactly. And as well, with all of this, like the beginning of the why was exactly that, right? It's like making sure we have with my partner the biggest amount of years where we are healthy and can do things together. And the initial goal was actually for me to retire at 40, which is still 4 years from now. And that was my goal. It was like, we stay at Google until I reach 40, and at 40, we retire together. And that was the mindset. Now, with the past 6 years and a half, and I think a lot of your audience may hopefully relate to that if they listen to a lot of your blog posts, it's like, there's a lot more to FIRE than the financial piece. Actually, for me, the financial piece is just the tool, right? It's obviously what is needed, having the finances to support it. But the mindset shift that I had was, for me, crazy when I reflect on that, because when I started in Google, and people who are not at Google may not understand, but I started in one of the lowest level. I started as a level 2, and it's very low. You too? Yeah. And then I left Google as a level 6. So for people to visualize a bit of the growth there, I was very career driven at the beginning. I was like, I need to climb the ladder super fast. I need to be promoted. I need to increase my salary. I had been raised as someone who was like, my family was very frugal. So saving money, having money is very important, of like being financially independent, super important. And so I really started that mentality with my career at Google. And then FIRE disrupted that very quickly, because I know she knows the Donegans. the couple of, Fire, they're based in the UK, and they had this course, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, of like, build your I did that, and it related so much. I realized how much I'm not that career driven. I have no interest in becoming a director in a company. With a higher level comes more responsibilities, more stress, more after hour. It's after 8 p.m. and you're still working and stuff like that. And I was like, I do not want that life at all. So that really made me realize of how much I'm like, I actually do not care about the title, about all of that, like zero interest in that. And it shocked me when I worked on that personally, because I had been so career driven before. I was working for the promotion and all of that. And so it get flipped it on its head a bit, right? Of like, okay, actually, I do not care. And with that as well, and it goes with what you mentioned, the Die With Zero book, which I loved. I was also like, more money for what? For who? So one thing for me is I do not want kids. There is zero plans of kids not happening. And so I was like, I don't plan on leaving money to anyone. If there's money left, it's going to go to my sister and her kids. Fabulous for them, but that's not the plan. So all of the money is just for me. Then I have to spend it when I can, right? Because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So that also shifted my mindset about, okay, if promotion is not for the title or the level, it would be for money. But at some point, I don't need more money. And so that also helps so much with this mindset of there can be an end to that constant work grind, right? Because it doesn't need to stay. More money for what? Climbing the ladder to go where? And this is really something that for me resonated to the point that when I left, we can talk about how I made that decision, but easy, very easy.
That's awesome. I'm jazzed up. This is so awesome. Because you're hitting on so many things that we talk about on this podcast that I think about all the time. And I think what you're talking about is like, more money for what, right? And like this concept of enough. There is just a point at which you have enough, and more money doesn't really add much to your life, especially if you're not like someone who's like trying to ball out and like have 5 houses and a private jet and all that nonsense. Like, I don't care about that. I certainly don't care about titles or any of that. But I think it's still a really hard question of like, what is enough? And like, even when you get to that FI number, to say, all right, this is enough. And like, I'm going to actually move on. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And one other thing I wanted to comment on is just like, you got promoted 4 times in 10 years, which is a very fast pace, right? Like, I am a level 5 and I've been there for 13 years. So I have not had as rapid of a rise, but it's interesting. It sounds like that was what you were focused on making happen. And then you realized when you learned about fire, like, actually, I don't even care about that. And you started asking the question of like, what am I actually doing this for? And I have had that question a lot recently, given my challenges at work that we talked about before we started recording. And every day it's like, why am I doing this? And for me, it's like I have a clear vision of what I'm trying to create and what I'm trying to pursue in Google, which is essentially to create an opportunity for myself to teach envisioning workshops to teams and clients and people, because that's my vision, right? I want to do that outside of Google as a business, as an entrepreneur, in my own time, in my own way. And I very much see Google as a stepping stone to that. But without that, I would have been long gone, right? Like, in this situation that I'm in, it's just not worth the stress. But I think that a lot of people do not even stop to ask, why am I even doing this?
Absolutely.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of what other people doing, and also like how you snapped out of that.
Yeah. And made it clear as well that I was in that mindset for a very long time. And on top of being promoted 4 times at Google, I transferred to a non-program manager role, to the program manager ladder, because I realized there were more opportunities in Google and the salary was higher. So I did that move. And then I moved even 3 times because, well, first, I get bored very easily. So 3.5 years to a team seems like a good amount of time for me every time. But it's true that there is also, I think a lot of the time, for me, this is one thing that I really realize is the societal pressure, right? What society expects. And we get raised with that mindset that to have value, you need to be successful, right? You're saying you got promoted. People are like, when are you promoted next? You have one child. When do you have the second child? When do you buy the house? When do you get married? When do you always more, right? People always look at it from an upward trajectory, right? This notion of going to go into a lot of psychological, sociological stuff there maybe, but like how being married is a higher status than being in a relationship where you're not married. It's higher in status than being a single person. Or there's so much of that in society. And I think it is really shaping how we view work as well. There is this notion of we should work our full life to be providing some sort of value to society and to have value as an individual. There's so much of a thing of like, oh, that person has whatever type of job that is not as shiny as your job, so you're doing better. Well, maybe they have zero interest in doing your job, and maybe they have a much happier life than you do, right? And I laughed, for example, it's a big sidetrack story for that, but I posted on Instagram when I left Google a photo of me with my badge being like, goodbye, Google, and all that. And one classmate from college pinged me and said, oh, so Google was not as good as you expected. And I was like, it was not as good as I expected. I've been there for more than 10 years. And I personally had a great time. I left on very good terms with the company. I was lucky to live on my own terms. And I was like, I had a great time. I love the company. I left because it was a good time for me and I wanted something else. And this notion that you are in a company and you're going to spend your life there. I think our generation changed a bit on that mindset of what work looks like. This is a mindset. And for me, really, this fire movement really changed my view entirely for that. And I spent hours, I don't know if you are the same, but my inbox is just fire combat. And I read so much of it. And I do so many of the YouTube channel and the training session and all of that. Like I love doing all of that. And really, I'm going to shout out to them again. Like this, the course, Extraordinary Life. You're going to have to say it because I have a hard time pronouncing it. From the Dunigans was fantastic because I wrote down my vision for my life. And I actually wrote it ahead of me. Again, it's like, I want to live a healthy, kind, and peaceful life. That's what I want. And then when you break that down, what does it look like? Well, work is pretty low on the list of how to do that. Sure, you need the money to be able to accomplish some of the things you want to do. But after that, it is extremely low. A lot of the things that I want with a kind piece, for example, is volunteering, coaching and mentoring for free. I love doing that. And I still do that a lot. And I plan on doing that for a long time. The working 40 hours a week and being stressed by performance evaluation and all that, that doesn't fall at all on the list.
It's a great point. And yeah, that course, Build an Extraordinary Life. And yeah, I went to the Economy Conference and they did a talk about that. And they talked about mini experiments and just getting clear on what you want and trying it, right? And it's cool because when I went to the Economy Conference, I met them. I met Tae Kim, who's going to be on the podcast. He's the financial tortoise on YouTube. But it's like hearing about what I talk about as envisioning and crafting a life you love and making work optional, using mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. It's just different ways of talking about the same thing and different ideas and kind of flavors of the same thing. But ultimately, it's asking, what do you actually want, right? What do you want? Not what should you want, not what does society tell you want, not what do you need to do to be safe and secure. It's what do you actually want? This is what I do in my group coaching program. I'm going to have some one-on-one conversations debriefing the program that we just finished. Everyone wants something different, right? One of the people in my group wants to do a TEDx talk and share his story with the world. Amazing. And someone else is more aligned with you. They just want to be present and peaceful, and they want to move slowly through their life, and they want to cook and travel. And it's like, we all get to choose what we want. And we can, just by thinking about what we want, we're already planting the seeds. And then we can start to talk about our vision with other people like you are right now. We can do meditation practices like affirmations, visualizations to kind of plant those seeds and water those seeds. And it's just inevitable that we're going to end up doing that. But if we don't stop and actually ask what we want through a program like I teach or the Donegans teach, and they're going to be coming on the podcast as well soon enough. I've been messaging with Katie, but with everything going on with the work, it's a lot of this has been on the back burner, why we've had to reschedule a few times. But it's like, you just need to slow down, ask yourself, what do I actually want? And kind of set aside all of the limitations and just like really ask. Because sometimes people try to justify what they want. Another book I like called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And basically they talk about like, if you set bigger goals or bigger vision, it's easier to achieve than a smaller incremental goal because you have to think completely differently. And they talk about wants versus needs. Most of the time you tell somebody like, oh, I want, like me, like I have my ridiculous idea. I want to build a skate park casita. Well, like people will be like, why do you need that? And I don't need that. I want it. Right. But we often feel the need to justify why we need something when really we can just want it. And that's enough. Right. So it's interesting to think about that. And I love that you realized that more money for just collecting more money just doesn't really make any sense. And I'm having a challenge, not a challenge. It's like, I have my situation where like my vision is like, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to lead these workshops and I want to make money. I like making money, but like, why? Why do I want to make more money if I'm financially independent so I can do this? Why do I want that money? What am I going to use that money for? And so it's something that I'm currently exploring. And a friend of mine, another longtime Googler friend of mine who's now left Google and is doing coaching and things like that, he put that question to me and I was like, actually, it's a good question. I don't know.
It's funny because it's a slight tendency to this notion of, okay, everybody wants to make more money, right? As a societal baseline. And I don't know if this is the right term for that, but I feel like there is that, right? Beside the buying a house and having kids and getting married and all of that, it's like making money.
More money is always better. It is a societal script embedded in everyone's mind for whatever reason.
And I agree that to a lot of extent, you need money to make a lot of things happen, right? Like, obviously. And I'm very grateful to my employment at Google for allowing me to get a salary that would be higher than whatever usual salary I could have gotten in another company, for example, at least in Europe. This is what everybody wants. So I'm going to tell you, for example, when I said to everybody that I was quitting Google and I was taking 1 year mini retirement or break if you want, whatever, people were like, oh, so I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to be traveling everywhere and I'm going to be doing this and that. And I was like, I mean, sure, I'm going to travel a bit. I'm hiking the Camino de Compostela in Europe. So I'm hiking all the way to Spain, which takes a lot of time because me and my partner, we are slow hikers. So we're taking our time. But then I was like, oh, but I'm spending the full summer in Zurich at home doing nothing. I'm just receiving friends and family and having all of the flexibility to go for random coffee chat at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon or like all of that. But my plan is to stay home and enjoy it. And there is this notion as well, like it's like, oh, you have a break there for you must be on your world tour or you must be constantly doing this and that. It's like, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But why is there such an expectation that you have free time, therefore you're traveling. You have free time, therefore you're doing this. And constantly improving yourself or whatever. Like, I enjoy being at home and doing absolutely nothing. And there's some days I'm on my couch reading for 12 hours and not reading any personal development, like purely fiction, having fun, enjoying my reading. It's like, that's me. That's what I want to do. I think as well, I want to give a tiny hint just on the fire journey. I feel like as well, the people who do not know too much about the journey, or like they look into it and they're like, this is a life of pasta and living in a 1-bedroom apartment. They think that like getting too far is that way. And this is no fun because I want to be able to spend my money now and I don't see the point of doing that right now. Like that's also one thing I want to say to people is like, it could be if I see some people who do that and they want to be retired at 25 and it's like, great, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. But like, for example, it's like, okay, I live in a very nice, comfortable apartment with a view to the Zurich Lake and I'm enjoying my place. Now I'm not traveling every other month to fancy places because I actually don't enjoy it. I enjoy the odd travel here and there, but I'm not a big traveler myself. And so this notion as well that people are like, what is it that you personally want to do? And where do you want to spend your time and your money? And it doesn't look the same for everybody. What makes one person happy is not going to make the other one happy. And so the same way, for example, people were saying, oh, but like, you never go on vacation. So obviously you're saving 60+% of your income. I'm like, well, you are spending it on a vacation. I am spending it on ETFs. We're just spending it in different places because I have a different goal and I have different interests. And your vacation sounds fantastic. I would not have enjoyed it. And so I think there is that as well of people trying to get away from what I call the Instagram lifestyle. When you are on it and you get so jealous of maybe the lifestyle of some other people who share this fantastic picture. And it's like, yeah, but do you actually want to be there? Or like, do you want the full life that goes with it? If the answer is no, then do your own thing, right? And I think this fire journey is really that as well, is introspection. I feel like this is the main thing of fire, at least for me, that has been my experience. Really introspection into what do I want now? What do I want in the future? And all of my lifestyle now is derived.
Yeah, there's a few things that you said there that really stuck out to me. Like just that question from people that you tell them, oh, I'm taking some time off. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, it's a fair question, but also like, there's like an expectation that you're going to do something big. And that like, I think it's just like that achievement addiction, right? That certainly you had before, I have. And it's even in like the breaks, even in the times where we're supposed to be resting, it's like, well, I guess I should be reading this personal development book or going for a run or exercise, like whatever. It's like, no, you can just rest. And actually, I had a series a long time ago with a friend of mine. She was actually the first time she was on the podcast, another Googler, of course. It seems like everyone I know. I used to joke that this podcast is the people who have left or are leaving Google podcast. And her name's Julia Lee, and she basically wanted to transition from Google into the field of sustainability. But she gave herself 3 months to rest, and she talked about how resting is actually a skill. We need to learn how to rest, and we need to practice rest. And so like she joked that her now husband came into the house and saw her like laying on the couch watching TV. And he's like, well, what's up? What are you doing? And she's like, I'm practicing resting. It was hilarious. And interesting, when I took my own sabbatical in 2022, I had 3 words that I was focused on, like kind of intention: rest, play, and connect. And that's all I did. I recorded like 2 podcasts, but I didn't publish any podcasts. I wasn't trying to build the business. I wasn't trying to do any of that. I was just resting. And that is, like you said, like totally fine.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. And I had that when the Monday morning when you had the meeting and people were asking, so what did you do this weekend? And my vision of at work, let's say for the past, actually since I arrived in Switzerland, so it had been like 6 years, the last 6 years of my career at Google, which is the biggest part. When I shifted from Dublin, where I was at YouTube, to the research department of Google in Zurich, I had gone through burnout. I ended up in the hospital, burnout. And so my decision when I arrived in Zurich was like, I do not work after hours anymore. I do not work at the weekend. Everything work related has to be done during work hours. Even stuff where I would be recommended personal development book about becoming a public speaker and this and that. And more recently, my manager would be sharing stuff about how to become a manager because he wanted me to become a manager at Google. And I was like, That's great. I am reading that on Fridays during my work time. That doesn't sound fun. I am not that on my personal time. And every weekend, I am, as I said, a lazy person. I could be either 12 hours climbing a mountain or 12 hours on my couch watching Netflix. That's my 2 mode. And I'm also an introvert in the sense that I like interacting with people, but they drain my energy. So I need a lot of time to recuperate. So usually my weekends would be, I'm at home on my couch watching TV or reading, but that's all I do. Maybe I have one social interaction, but it should not be more than one per weekend. And so on Monday mornings, I would arrive and they were like, hey, what did you do this weekend? I was like, oh, nothing much, just relax and watch TV. And for some people, it would be like, well, that sounds boring. And like, but you are more exhausting of your weekends and it's Monday morning. And it's not to think that we're exhausted so much that we just can't do anything at the weekend, maybe. But like, that was not my thing. The thing is, I am, as I said, a lazy person. I really enjoy watching TV and reading and being on my couch. And I think there is this you talk about this achievement addiction. I think I used to call it this performance addiction, as in like, you need to be performing at all times. Mm-hmm. That is exhausting. And this is one thing that I told me. So I told myself, I will not look for a new job before March of next year. And right now, some days I'm like, oh my God, I just spent a full week doing nothing but watching TV. I could be starting a blog. I could be doing this, doing that. And I'm like, why? First, I don't want to do it. That sounds like work. I don't want to work. And second, I told myself I can totally afford a full year doing nothing. So why am I stressing out now when it's been just 3 months in? But I think this is very ingrained in our minds, right? That's we need to be performing at all times. We need to be contributing. That's exhausting. I find it exhausting. And I'm lazy. So I'm like, don't want to do that.
I love it. Yeah. You're choosing, right? Like ultimately, I talk about the intersection of mindfulness and financial independence is awareness and choice. You're aware of your energy, of your introverted needing to recharge. You're aware of you wanting to be lazy and just relax. And you're choosing to do that. Other people might choose to go out partying or go to a show or go to a concert or go on a hike. Everyone can choose what they want. And yeah, I can say from my experience, I'm exhausted during the week. I'm exhausted on the weekend, and I'm exhausted again at the start of the next week because I have kids and I chose to have kids, but there's no break when you have kids. You stop working and you start parenting. And maybe sometimes you're doing both. Certainly if you're my wife and you're working at home, you're doing both all day, every day. And it's exhausting, but so you even more like you need to create space to rest. And we talked before, like I'm in this time where I'm just like grinding all the time. I'm either doing my work during the day and I'm either doing more work at night or I'm doing my side hustle stuff at night. And it's like, I see it and I know it's not sustainable. And I have this light at the end of the tunnel, which is this big meeting next week where I'm going to pitch my vision to this person who can make it happen at Google, which is basically to create a role or hire me as a consultant to lead these envisioning workshops. So I have this end goal in mind, but I really need to start creating more space and just more time for doing nothing and if that works out, or if it doesn't work out, there's going to be a serious period of rest before that next chapter because I've just been grinding so hard since getting back from mental health leave. Hello.
Yeah. And that's actually, it's a segue because it also talks about how when we made that decision to leave Google, and I say we because my partner and I made the decision at the same time. So he had been at Google for 14 years. And she had been also this past, 4 years at least, working so much and being so stressed. So he was a manager. He's an AI research engineer. So there were a lot of development on that at Google, very intense work and deliverable and all of that. And at the same time, he was a manager of like a 5+ people team. And for people who are not at Google, who are listening, you may not know, but there's a lot of things that comes with a manager at Google, a lot of non-pleasant work that has to be done. And he was just exhausting. He loved his team. He loved these people. He loved the project, but it was just eating at him of all of the stress on the side of just the actual engineering or people management work. And that was hard on him. And he had done like a career break because he needed the rest. And then when he came back, right away, he was exhausted again, super quickly with just what it takes. And we kept on joking in the past of, at least I joked even more often than him of like, oh, can't wait for retirement. At that time, with the mindset of retirement is at 40, still 4 or 5 years away. And we kept on joking about that until in some Valentine's Day this year, where really he was like exhausted. And he's like, oh my God, I wish I could retire. And then I was like, well, okay, yeah, let's just do it. And so to go back a bit on how that decision came to play, people must now know that for the FIRE goal, there is a 4% floor that you can use. I always use that as a few money target and not a proper retirement target because I'm extremely risk averse. And also life in Switzerland is very expensive. So that seems a bit too ambitious for me, but let's track it nonetheless. And I had reached that number in January. So in January, I was like, hey, fantastic. I have reached it. I don't plan on doing anything with it, but it gave me a new sense of security. I have that security that I reached that number. Probably I had that security before, obviously, but that was really helping. But we didn't plan on doing anything with it until Valentine's Day, where I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Okay, I cannot retire fully right now, at least not if we stay in Switzerland. If we go elsewhere, probably, but not here. But you can. And my partner is older than I am, so he has reached many times his paradigm. He doesn't have to worry about it. And yet he was always so much more stressed than I was in retiring. And at that point, I was like, let's just do it. And I was like, okay, we are giving ourselves 1 month to think through it and see if we change our mind. And I don't know for you, I hope this will be like that for you when you do it. But once my decision was made, and I feel like the decision was already made, right? Because I already had planned on leaving Google at some point. With the layoffs in Google, we already had discussed what it would be to be out of Google. That mindset was already there of like quitting. But then when the decision was made on Valentine's Day, so me, I was in my mind, every single meeting at work, every single project, I was on handover mode. People right now in Google stress and trying to grab on work and being very like, I need to have ownership of stuff and stuff. Oh my God, I was delegating like crazy. Or I was like, you want it? I'm not going to fight you on it. Take it. From the strategy perspective, in Switzerland, you need to be employed on the day of the bonus payout to receive it. So not at the beginning of the month, but on the day of the payout.
The payout.
So we were like, what if we say it? So it was end of March, the payout. And they're like, what if we say it beginning of March? And then Google decide to be like, we're going to let you go before so that we don't have to pay your bonus. So we're like, we're going to wait for the payout. And the day after, we told our managers. And I had prepared my manager on it. I was giving FIRE talks in Google. So he was fully aware that eventually we planned that this was coming. He did not realize it was coming so fast, but I told him, my partner is retiring. Therefore, as I had said that when he retired, as I retire, we reach that day faster than expected, but we reach it. So that's the decision. That's it. And then at that point, there's no negotiation power, right? Because I don't want the money. I don't want a promotion. I don't want more scope. I just don't want to work.
I want less scope.
I also was in what I would call a decision snowball.
Decision what?
Decision snowball.
Okay.
Is that the term in English? You know when?
Yeah.
You start rolling with it. So last October, I had the hysterectomy. I knew that I just didn't want kids. And I was like, I don't want kids. I don't see why I should have to deal with everything that comes with having a uterus. So let's just take it out and be done with it. And that is obviously a very big decision. I think the same way it is to have a child, the decision of taking it out so you cannot have children anymore is a big decision, right? And so a lot of work also came into that. So that was a big first decision. Then after that, I was like, okay, let's go with all of the medical stuff. So I used to wear glasses and I was like, let's do the eye surgery. I kept saying I wanted to do it. Let's do it. So then I had made the call to do that in December. So by the time the retirement came around, I don't know, I was in a decision role. I was like, yeah, let's retire and do it. And I feel like it's really, the more I think about it, the more I think it starts there. Like it makes it so easy, one thing after the other. But because people kept on saying like, when I had told a few colleagues before I announced it to my manager and they were like, are you changing your minds? Do you think you're going to regret it? And I was like, no, so far it hasn't hit me yet that I'm actually leaving. And I don't think I want to go back on my decision. And now that it's been 3 months of leaving Google, still don't regret it. And still I'm like, this is the best decision I could have done. And it's funny because when I was in Google, the first thing I would do every morning was open my fire tracker. I think everybody who's on their journey has a spreadsheet with all of their formulas. Every morning I would open it and I would be like, where I am on my journey. Even to the last day when I left Google, I was checking my numbers and all that. I have checked it barely 3 times since I left, even though now money is not getting in anymore from the salary. And you could think that it's just going out. I pay less attention to it now. And I think it's also with this mind of like the decision was made. It was very pragmatic. I made it because I was very sure of what you can never be super sure. But like, yeah, I feel secure. I'm very confident about my decision. I made it. I'm not going to stress over it. Now it's done. I'll reevaluate next year. And that feels so good. And obviously it took time to get to that mindset.
Sure.
But that feels good. And for someone who is very risk averse like I am, I'm surprising myself every day.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, thank you for sharing how you came to that decision and how you, like this, it's interesting that decision snowball, as you said, like you made one decision. I like joke that like I decided to move from San Francisco to New Jersey during COVID by like going to the Home Depot and getting like 4 boxes. Like I spent like $10 on boxes and I'm like, well, I guess I'm moving. And then one thing leads to the other and then you just start doing it. And I've had a lot of things like that. I'm like currently in one of those things where like you just start seeing how these things start coming together by you take one action, it opens a door to another potential opportunity and just start moving forward. And yeah, I love to hear that you realize that it was a great decision and you're enjoying it. And so, yeah, I'm sure people are curious. You hinted at it, but like, what are you up to? And what have you been doing since? I know you went on a big hike. Did you say you went to Santiago de Compostela?
So that's the goal. So let's say this hike to Santiago de Compostela has many routes throughout Europe. So there's many different ways, all the ways lead to Santiago de Compostela. And so we had started our journey, let's say, with my partner 5 years ago throughout Switzerland, doing the Via Alpina, which is up and down mountains. We're very lazy, so it took us 5 years to reach the French border. And so what we did in May, so the week after we left Google, we were like, let's disconnect entirely. And we left for 2 weeks and a half. And we did a big part, maybe 300 kilometers of the path in France. And now we stopped to a place called the Cuillon Valley. But there's still a good 800 kilometers to go. So in September, we are going back to do 500 more kilometers to reach finally, hopefully, the Spanish border. And I think that's going to be enough for like September to mid-October. And then we plan on doing the Spanish side, the rest of it, in March next year, because we have plenty of time. So why not? So we're cutting it in tiny pieces. Also because, as I said, we are lazy and I have no intention of sleeping in crappy hotels and whatnot for 3 months in a row doing it. So we've been doing that. This summer, staying home in Zurich. So I live close to the Zurich Lake. So we've been enjoying staying here, receiving friends and family who came to visit us, developing new routines. I don't know for you, but I'm terrible at building new routines. So I finally, I don't know. We need to test it out. It's been 6 days. But now every morning we walk by the lake, we finish with a swim, and then we come home. So that's like our morning routine now, which is lovely. And then I've just been, from now, spending my time meeting people to talk about fire. I keep on doing a lot of the career coaching that I was doing when I was in Google, even though I'm not at Google anymore, but I'm still connected to all of the mentees I had when I was in Google and the one outside of Google. So I'm doing a lot of that. I'm consulting for a friend's company, but that's very good friends. So I think that's more social interaction than this can count on work. And then the rest of the time I watch Netflix and I read a lot of books, fiction. So that's fun. And that's all the plans we have for now. My partner is from Brazil. So at some point we want to go in Brazil to see family and friends and get a bit. And that's it. Quickly, it's going to be a year. So my plan is to start looking for jobs from March, April next year. So it's not like I need to be unemployed by then, but I will start looking for a job by then. So that's it. And as you can tell, it's not a lot of things planned for the amount of time we have left, but I am very fond of slow living and I want a lot of rest time at home doing nothing in between. So we plan for a lot of that. Yeah, it sounds probably very exciting for a lot of people, but I am so glad for it. And I really developed a mentality of being grateful. So just every morning I wake up, I have my 2 hours coffee break, just looking at the lakes, doing nothing but drinking coffee and listening to music. And I'm like, that's life.
This is pretty good.
Pretty good.
That's wonderful. I'm wondering, and I bet you other people are wondering, it's like, why get another job? If you enjoy this so much and you have hit the 4% rule, which assumes that your living expenses can be covered by 4% of your, if you pull out 4% of your investments, and your partner has well more than that, why get another job?
Yeah. So the first thing I can touch on is with my partner. So we're not married, and I don't know why. I'm still in the mindset of, no, I do know why. I want to lead my finances as a single woman. I've built my finances so far alone, and I really want to plan it as if we're not sharing finances. We are paying expenses and we're not pro rata of what we earn, now pro rata of what we have. But I'm really dealing with my finances on my own. So I'm not counting on any of his money to sustain my lifestyle. Because as much as I love him, I'm very pragmatic. I'm like, who knows? Are we actually going to stay together or not? I have no idea. So that's one reason I'm really focusing just on the amount of money I have on my own and not any of his money. For him, he is not looking for any other employment. He's done. He can just play with his research project and all that and open sourcing. So first, the reason why I'm not saying I'm fully retired now is because Switzerland is a very expensive country. And I do not know how confident I am in the 4% rule to sustain my lifestyle in Switzerland. But now there's a few things that we're doing. First, I am not looking at all for 100% rule. Actually, I'm looking for part-time maximum. What I'm doing is I calculated pretty much what I wanted. I think it's called cost buyer, where I want to just what is necessary to pay for my annual expenses, which in Switzerland would be a fifth of what my Google salary was. So I'm like, this opened the door to so many more jobs. I'm pretty sure I can find a 20-hour contract somewhere and that would work. One of the things I would love is wintertime, I'm doing some contractual work that earns enough to cover the full year expenses. And doing that for a few years until I am more confident with my fire number. Like I would love to be at a 2%. That's how risk averse I am. And I remember Mr. Money Moustache talked about that, about being like, oh, you could be at much more than 5%, 6%, 7% or whatever. And that's probably way too risk averse on my side, but that's what I want to do for a few years. Just getting a job that pays for my annual expenses and see how that goes. Obviously, this would mean less, at barely 20 hours a week, I would assume. So that's going to be a nice life balance already. So I want to see how that's going. But at the same time, we're also looking at geo-targeting because we know if we were to move to Portugal tomorrow, we definitely don't need to work anymore. I definitely don't need to work anymore either. So this is something we're considering. The thing is, we love Switzerland so much. I don't know how many of your listeners are based in Switzerland, but it is the lifestyle. My partner always jokes that he lived most of his life in Brazil. And then at 35, she moved to the US and she lived 8 years in the US. And he was like, wow, this is first world country. And then he moved to Switzerland. And he was like, no, this is first world country. and this is true. And
Interesting.
life here, every time, we always joke that every time we leave Switzerland to go anywhere else in Europe, we're like, can't wait to be home where things are working, and it's Swiss. So it's very square.
Right.
But damn, life is pleasant. So we want to stay here as much as possible.
Yes.
And that's what I want to do as well. It's like, I think my 40 year, like retiring at 40 would still match if I just find a job that paid for my expenses. So I'm like, maybe 4 more years of working half time and then I'm fully done. It doesn't have to last that long. And also, now that I can choose anything I want because of that money freedom, I don't want to work in anything that doesn't align with my value. Like, I want to work only for the kind of job where it's supporting my core value and what I want to see in the world. And then that's going to be fun. So I don't have your entrepreneurial vibe or the vibe that the goal of a lot of actual fire people who want to build their own business and all this. Like, as I say many times, I'm very lazy. I don't want to have to deal with a lot of what comes with entrepreneurial lifestyle and the stress of that. But I want something that really aligns with my core value, and then hopefully it will be fun. And then 20 hours doesn't sound like work activity. The idea. Now we can talk again next year and see how that goes in my search for part-time job in that vibe.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear how you think about it. And because, yeah, theoretically, you are already there. You're good, but you're risk averse. So you want to pad the bank account a little bit more. Totally applaud your independence, right? Like, you have a partner, you love them, like, you want to be together, but you're taking it into your own hands and making sure that you're good no matter what. And I think that is super important, that we all have that we're good in the situation we're in. We're good if this situation doesn't work out, whether that be a job or a partner or whatever it is. Like, you need to make sure that, as I say, put on your oxygen mask first. You got to make sure that you're good no matter what happens. Otherwise, you're not really financially independent or secure. You're just temporarily, and you don't want to be in that precarious situation.
Yeah. And this is one thing that I do. I was already doing that within Google, and I'm doing that now, is doing a lot of fire talks with women specifically, because I think empowering women to be financially independent, because same part of societal structure and all that we know about women condition is very often women are not as well financially prepared. And also they're relying on their partner, and sometimes they're held hostage of a relationship because financially they just cannot live. And I'm definitely not in that situation because it's going very well with my partner. But if that happens, you want to be able to be, okay, I'm done, I can go. And I think that's super important. And it's valuable for everybody, men and women. But that's essential to have that financial independence, you on your own, and not with your partner and not with anyone else, right?
Agreed. All right. Well, let's switch gears now, Flo, into the Mindful Fire Final Four. Are you ready?
Yes.
The first question is all about envisioning, right? We've talked a lot about what you're up to now and some of your plans for the future, but I'm curious if there are any big visions for your life of what you want to create, or is it very much doing what you're doing, which is totally awesome and fine as well?
Yeah. So I'll re-say it because I mentioned earlier that my vision now is really to live a healthy, kind, and peaceful life. And so with that, on a personal level, there's a few things that came into that. From a healthy perspective, I'm really switching gear to align to my values of being vegan, only having a sustainable lifestyle, or as much as I can, and things like that. So I'm educating myself a lot of that. And I actually would love to educate a lot of people on that as well. So I'm switching gear as well professionally on a lot of things professionally. as much as work we can talk about now, on that mindset. And then with the kind aspect of my vision, I really love helping people. I used to be a mentor and a coach at Google. So really returning that and coaching people and mentoring people in being financially independent for me is very important. One of my big vision that I started working now and I want to keep on ongoing is empowering women to build financial independence for themselves. So that's one of the big goals that I have. How much of it do I do as just fun side activity? How much of it do I try to get paid for? I don't know yet, but that's the vision.
Very cool. All right. The second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
First, taking control quickly, and knowing where you are and where you want to go. When I started, I had no idea how much money I had, how much money I would eventually need. So taking that control and writing everything down and facing the reality of how much you have and how much you spend. And actually, the main advice I would give is do not fall into lifestyle inflation. That is very hard to sustain. And if every time you earn more, you spend more, then the situation is not going to change. So that for me is very important. Taking control and maintaining the goal that you have and not falling for everything the world want to sell you.
Very good. Now, the third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
For that, I would say not being too hard on yourself. I don't know for you, but a lot of people, every time they think about meditation, they're like, oh, but you need to clear your mind and don't think about anything else. And I can't maintain that kind of thing. I think the same way with fire, that is not live on pasta and live in a one-room apartment. Mindfulness is not all that. It's not that at all. It's being more aware of what's around you and not feeling bad when you feel like you're not being mindful all the time, but just trying to notice it and just recentering on yourself and on what's happening around you and being more conscious. I think that's important. I think it's the same with this performance or achievement expectation all the time. Going back to, you can try, you can fail many times. Take your time to do it. As long as you want to do it and you're making the bit of effort, I think it's great. And there's no performance leaderboard anywhere. Even against yourself, you don't have to have your own leaderboard, right? Just do what feels good for you. And for me in my life, meditation, mindfulness has been so helpful throughout a lot of it, throughout the stress of work, the stress of money as well, and what comes with that in general for people. And I find it very helpful to just recenter, refocus, just notice and not stress. Mindfulness is not supposed to increase your stress level. It's supposed to decrease it. So lowering your expectation as well at what you want to achieve with that.
Yeah, fair enough. Great point. Mindfulness and meditation is not to increase your stress. That is for sure. So yeah, I think just being kind to yourself is wonderful advice. All right. And Flo, the last question is, how can people connect with you online, see what you're up to? You don't have a blog, you don't have a podcast, but if there's anywhere that maybe people can connect with you if they have questions or want to hear more about your experience, or maybe they want to talk to you about mentorship or something like that.
Yeah, and actually I'm very open to that. So you can find me on LinkedIn with my full name, Florence Poirel. And my profile picture still has me in glasses. So here you go. I'm the one with the red glasses on the profile picture. And really connect, and feel free to mention that you listen to this podcast. I would love to chat more. And who knows, if I launch a blog eventually, I'll announce it there. So here you go.
Well, that is fantastic. Flo, thank you so much for being here. I've loved this conversation. It's so cool to hear about the thought process that you went through, shifting from that achievement addiction and getting promoted every 2 years to making that the goal to actually, I don't need more money and I don't want more money and I don't want more responsibility. I actually just want to relax and be lazy and read and watch Netflix and hang out with my partner and my friends and my family. And I think that is wonderful. And you still have this vision for the future, but because you've built financial independence, you have a lot more options and you don't need to make as much. So now you can do whatever you want, regardless of how much it makes, because you have this financial position. And so it's been awesome to hear about that whole journey. And I wish you the best of luck. And of course, if I can support you in any way, anytime, please do let me know. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Adam, for having me on the podcast. I really loved it. And I loved listening to it all the time, part of my mindfulness and meditation. So I am glad to be part of it as well. And all the best as well to all of the listeners of your podcast. I hope that this was inspiring, or at least giving some ideas as well of how they can reevaluate their life.
Amazing. Very cool. Thank you again. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.